you mentioned, I know what you did last summer and the hook. One
Yeah.
thing I see quite a bit is people say, I don't want my mind filled with negative imagery. And, have you thought about that?
No,
No?
I haven't thought about that. I mean, as a guy who I enjoy like extreme forms of a lot of things. So like, I'm a
You're
big
the
heavy metal
Turbo
guy.
Kid.
There's a lot of Turbo Kid. There's tons of gore in that movie. I love horror movies. Not I like more low budget stuff and indie stuff and the classics.
Well, you're
Not like
Canadian.
the
You got to love
popcorn.
Cronenberg, right?
Oh, dude, yeah. He's okay. We can go on a tangent real quick. His son,
Yeah, Brandon.
Cronenberg, have you seen Possessor?
Yeah. Yes. This is
That
like
movie.
this is exactly what you would want Cronenberg's son to be doing.
Dude, you could have not told me who directed that. I would have been like, did a Cronenberg direct this? Like,
Well, I thought, hey, did you have a child with David
amazing.
Lynch? This is amazing.
Yeah, it had all the body horror that David Cronenberg would have had, and but I've never seen him do anything that psychological. That was like a clinic in psychological horror. That movie, Possessor. Can't preach that enough. If you have any horror,
parental advisory, and
yes.
not
it was 18A. Basically, it's just because of gore, I think.
Well, it's gore, but I mean, gore on its own, and this is Cronenberg's majesty, right? Is that it's never gore on its own. It's actually causing you to realize that you are a meat tube. And, like if you remember, I think it's Shivers in the background, there's a poster and it says something like, sex is the clever invention of a venereal disease. Right. And Cronenberg's always constantly reminding you that you yourself are the disease. Right. It's not so much that, diseases inhabit you, but rather you are the inhabitor of the thing that perceives yourself as not being the disease that can become diseased. But you are actually the disease, right? And you're strapped to the meat tube. You are the witness. That's what Videodrome is all about, is being the witness, right? Go all the way through, Max. Go all the way through. And he ends up watching himself, go all the way through, because that's what we do. We watch ourselves go all the way through the meat tube grinder of life.
Yeah, that's a good description of what body horror is.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, it's not all as zen as Cronenberg makes it, but in any case, I have a lot of Cronenberg imagery. Like my 18 is a TV, and it's the Videodrome TV with the gun, the flesh gun coming out, or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that is awesome, man. But anyway, a very violent movie. Like, it's not just the gory; it's the of Possessors, the violence of it. It's very, very visceral. Anyway.
Well, I asked because I'm empathetic to it. I'm sympathetic to it. As I age, I find I'm not, I'll make exceptions and watch a new Cronenberg movie or a Brandon Cronenberg movie. Or there's some great new horror movies that have come out over the last couple of years, but I feel more affected from it. And I don't know why, but I think age, makes me not want to be as hands-on in my imagination, so to speak. But I get a lot of people, they just say, not only they're concerned, they're concerned about not only having violence in their minds, but also just the zany, crazy imagery. Now we know that it fades, but if I can find in your heavy metal soul any sympathy or whatever, I mean, what would you advise?
Sure.
Can you think of alternatives for a person who, might not share that lust for blood?
Yeah, I didn't mean to sound dismissive or
no.
Like, if anyone listening to this is of that ilk, I didn't mean to say like, oh, I'm too good for that. That's just not how I operate. Like, not that I'm a violent guy or anything, but like, that's what's memorable to me. And again, I do consume a lot of like heavy metal and horror, and not that it's all horrifically gory or bad or whatever, but a lot of it uses imagery to tell a bigger story.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of horror movies that are on the surface like horrific and like scary, like bone chilling, but it's like, well, they're telling a very like a very important story. Like the movie Relic. It's an Australian film. It came out last year. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen it.
It's about Alzheimer's, and it's terrifying, man. Like, as somebody who's seen people go through it depicted Alzheimer's and it's weird. There's a scene in it, like, not to get into too many spoilers, but there's a scene where one of the characters, like, they kind of walk through a maze, and I think it was the director kind of showing you what it's like to have Alzheimer's, and they don't know where they're going and stuff, and
right.
It's a very intense part of the film. And anyway, film can be and the music and stuff can use all this extreme imagery, but there's usually something more to it. It's not doing that for the sake of it. It's usually doing that to usually, say something significant. Right, yeah. I mean, some movies, are just doing that for the sake of it. But, yeah, if you know what I mean. So anyway, not to get, for people who might be more sensitive to that, I guess if you're building your images like that, that's kind of a big thing. So maybe don't pick violent things, like don't pick swords or guns or,
right.
I mean, now that you're saying that, like, I'm starting to realize how many of my images or weapons are guys from horror movies and stuff. Or, but yeah, I mean, don't pick that kind of thing, right? You want to pick maybe, positive stuff. So people, I mean, I have images. I have teddy bears and rainbows, like, literally in my system, and right. Those actually have, because when you memorize too, it's not so much. It's not always a story that you remember too, or the people. Like, sometimes if I memorize a deck of cards in like 20 seconds, some of my images are so fast, and I don't always remember what happened, but sometimes I remember the feel of it, right? So, like, this felt like a Star Trek character, but which one? Or this felt like happy. I'm like, okay, oh yeah, it's a rainbow. Like, sometimes it's the feeling you remember, and then that drags you back to it. So you want maybe pick things that have positive associations to you, and instead of, like, again, I'll have two people interacting, and if depending on the location, if there's a pit, maybe the guy pushes him into it. So instead of that, maybe they're pulling him up. They're doing something positive.
Right.
Or tickling each other. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's very good. And that whole push-pull thing is kind of interesting as well, because, like, let's say you memorize passwords or whatever, and you've got to have uppercase and lowercase. You could have something like that. So the person is pushing someone off the cliff, but, helping them down a cliff in order to remember it's lowercase, and then pulling them up a cliff to remember it's uppercase or something like that.
That's really good.
So yeah.
You don't stop, man. You always got ideas. It's awesome.
That's why they call me the mechanic. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how all that stuff would play out in competition, but it in terms of long-term retention, that those kinds of ideas certainly help. And, that kind of stuff is in Bruno as well. In earlier Renaissance tech manuals, they would say things like have the person standing up versus having them sit down for certain functions. So you could reuse a person to indicate something about a text. I don't actually know why they would need to know capitalization and lowercase back then, but whatever. It's in Bruno as a possible thing, and I think I've seen it in other ancient texts.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for that. That's good. I mean, my first thing when I was thinking is if I didn't want to use the hook or whatever in that movie, it could be tickling with the feathers or something. The same guy, but he's got feathers. But in full disclosure, I already mentioned I use the Cronenberg stuff. My chain is not just any generic chain. It's for 62, it's that woman from Hellraiser, but she's shooting the chain out of her hand. I don't even know if she shoots it out of her hand in the movie, but I have her doing it anyway because it's a queen of clubs. So I just see that nun or whatever she is from Hellraiser. The chain just comes out of her hand with the hooks, and the little weird face.
Yeah. Oh yeah.